Burb Falls, Midwest. What's up, guys? Drug a Yukon XL home last night. A few dings, a few dents. Pretty decent shape other than that. A little rust. Tranny's out of it, which is why I get them so cheap. Not a bad rig, but it'll probably get torn apart. Pretty typical weather. Pretty typical leather wear. How the hell's the seat? I don't know what kind of wizardry is going on where that's the headrest side, but kind of backwards seats. So typical leather wear. Ooh, it does have a moonroof. Didn't notice that yesterday. But she'll be the next one to donate a motor and some other parts, so. Hey guys, welcome back. Today on Burb Falls Midwest, we do a tranny swap in this Yukon XL. It's a 2001, still in pretty good shape. I think it's going to be worthwhile to put a transmission in it. So we'll do that, and I'll show you a couple tips and tricks, and hopefully you guys can get something out of it. Stay tuned. Alright, so we have our rear drive shaft out. Laying back there on the ground. You always get a little bit of tranny fluid when you pull that, so I advise to put a pan underneath the output of the transfer case. If you haven't pulled out the front drive shaft out of one of these, it's not too hard. Just, it threw me for a loop the first time, so I had to research it and figure it out. The front bolts, just like the back, 11mm head bolts. And then here you have this pinch clamp that holds the boot onto the transfer case. If you'll take death wheels, what I'm going to use, and cut right there. I don't know if you can see, but there's a couple little tabs, and one of them is bent over, and if you just massage that tab until it's gone, it'll release, and you're not really cutting into the band itself. And then after that's gone, you can take a little screwdriver here and just pry the rubber boot off, and you'll be ready to go. It almost looks like it would come, but I know it won't without tearing up the boot. So that's what we'll do next. There you go, got the little hook going, so the clamp will come off, and you can use the hose clamp, or if you really want to source another pinch clamp and a set of pliers, you can, but I'm not going to, probably. So now you're just looking to get the lip of this boot there we go. Broke off the lip here. There you go. And again, you're probably going to get some tranny fluid out of here. I'm sure I will since I'm right under it. Amazingly not. We'll chalk that up. Alright, so the next thing to do after your drive shafts would probably be to take all these harnesses off the transfer case. There's several, but you can feel them all. They're pretty much all on top. None of them are bad to get to. So we'll keep on. We'll take these harnesses. We'll get these little retainers pushed back out of the transfer case holes here and get all of our harnesses taken off. I already did the O2 sensors, all 4 O2 sensors already. That's what this was. So yeah, we'll just keep moving on. Alright, so I got all the harnesses pulled from the transfer case. Took this down here, and you want to be careful with this motor. It's pretty expensive, so you definitely don't want to drop the case on the ground. Got all the harnesses out. There are 2 vent tubes. One is actually coming from the transfer case. You need to disconnect. Another vent tube is clipped to the top of the transfer case, so it needs to come out as well. One's in the front, and that's where it goes to, so there'll be one in that region of top, and then there's the longer one that I undid, and it's missing in action right now. So my next step is going to be to support the bottom of this trans with a jack and a block so that I can take this cross member out, because it is a lot easier to get at the nuts on the transfer case. So we have 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and then we'll take the 2 bolts out from the cross member to the transmission mount, and we'll do I'll break again when we separate the transfer case from the transmission itself. Well guys, here we are. I got the cross member out, as you can see. Cross member's out. There's the trans mount. So I had supported the transmission and transfer case with a long block that would go all the way across the pan and the bend, and no, I'm not cranking up on it hard. It's just enough to take the weight off of it so I could get the cross member out. And then I like to let it down to where the tail of the transfer case rests on the torsion bar mount. You can leave it down there, and what that'll do is allow me to get to this top nut up here a lot easier. If you have a stubby 15mm wrench, you could probably get it with it up, but I don't see the point. I just like to drop it down here. This extension or adapter to mount the transfer case, do not take it apart at the transmission side, because you can't slide the transfer case back far enough to get it out. You have to take it here where it's a nut on a stud, and you'll have enough to slide the transfer case back past these studs, and once you get past the studs, you're pretty well past the output shaft out of the transfer case. So that is my suggestion here. So what I'll do is I will take out all the nuts, but I'll leave 2 kind of finger tight so that I can jack it back up where it's not resting on the torsion bar cross member anymore. Then I'll take the other 2 nuts all the way off and slide this dude out. again, be careful. This motor costs more than an entire transfer case from the junkyard, probably a few of them. So don't break that. If you want to take it off, if you're concerned, go ahead. I'll drop this thing on my chest before I drop it on the ground, so we shouldn't have an issue there. Stay tuned. Alright, fellas, here we are. I got all the nuts out of the transfer case, and we got the case split right there. I let it drain in the drain pan. It's about quit, so we'll keep going. Got a couple little tips, tricks, whatever. I couldn't find my 15 stubby gear wrench, so I just used a 1/4 inch ratchet with a 3/8 adapter and a short 15, and that'll get the top nut or two. There's one down on. There's this one here that this heat shield kind of screws you on this one. But I got a couple other little things here. I like to put the bolts and the straps back in the rear end and the front end so I don't lose them. I'll stick tranny mount bolts back in and thread them in so I don't lose them. I try and keep everything kind of together and put back in, because otherwise I'll sweep it up and have no idea where it's at. Other thing too is if you guys are using air to get everything apart, while you got your air hose here, if you're laying on the floor like I am and you're not ready to get a lift because you'll make your 2-car garage a 1-car garage, I get this little air thing here, so when I'm making a mess on my cardboard down here, I can just blow off my area and I'm pretty clean again. Works like a charm. So next we'll drop this transfer case out. What I'll do is I'll jack the jack up just a little bit so this tail isn't on the torsion bar cross member anymore, and then I'll slide it back, rotate this up, and that'll allow me to get it back far enough that I can drop the front out and take the transfer case out. Then after that, I will take the exhaust part here right after the Y, and then at each collector I'll take off and get this crossover tube out of the way here so we can get that tranny out. Hey guys, we're back. I got the exhaust off. It was a real bitch, which I would have expected nothing less. Also, a pain in the ass are these 2 connectors that go on the Prindle switch on the side of the tranny. This one usually comes out with a little bit of prying. The big one up top almost never comes out. I pried on it. It started to come, so I was tapping on it, and it broke right there. But this is a junk tranny, so I would have liked to keep it as a spare, but whatever. So we're gonna work on getting all the rest of the harness off the top here. If I can get my light to stay. You bastard. So, working on getting the rest of the harness off the top. Then we'll get the torque converter bolts out. If you're unfamiliar with how the best way to get these out of an LS while you're laying under it is to take the 2 starter bolts out here and here. Then there's a small bolt right here that'll take this plastic cover off. You can push the starter up out of the way and get to the torque converter bolts really easy. So we'll do that. And finally, if you're unfamiliar with how to get these transmission lines off, I'll take a minute to show you that too. Again, with my light being a bastard. It's got magnets and hooks, and you can use them all, and the son of a bitch doesn't stay anywhere you want it to. Oh, you son of a bitch. Anyhow. So you have this... So you have this protective plastic cover. And just kind of slide that up. And then here you'll notice these lines look relatively loose in there. Well, there's an O-ring back there, and then there is this snap ring that retains the line. And you have to get it started out. Find the back of it, kind of flick it. You can normally get it out. And then it falls out. But it made it all the way to the floor. And then these just kind of wiggle them and they pull right out. And that's how you disconnect these transmission lines. I'll do the other one. We will take a few of the bell housing bolts loose, mainly the top 3, and that way the dipstick can be pulled out because it's bolted to the bell housing on that bracket right there. More to come.
I love it in the morning. I love it in the evening. I love it in the daytime, nighttime, any other time is the right time for the night.
Hey guys, back again. Had to shut the camera off for a while. Battery was going low, and this transmission fought with me unlike anything I've ever seen, ever. I took all the bolts out of the bell housing, and the dowel pins were seized inside the case, and I had to beat and pry and hammer and cuss and everything else in the book. But that fucking fat pig is out of here. Now I need to flush the cooler lines. And so I thought I'd show you guys the cheap, easy way I do it. So I just get a cheap hand transfer pump. Got this one from Slow Riley's in my ATF. Hooked up to the one transmission line with the drain pan underneath it. And you just pump until it looks pretty clean. The transmission fluid that came out of here looked like used oil. It's black. Like black. So I'm going to go ahead and probably run a few quarts through here until it turns nice and red. It's getting there, but I'm just going to keep running some more through it. Yeah, that's getting much better. Yeah. I'm rolling a couple more pumps and call that good. Hello, we're back. So last night we got the transmission in, most of the harness hooked back up. I put the exhaust back in this morning. On the driver's side front, I had to remove the O2 sensor to get to one of the collector bolts, but it came out fine. We stuck that back in. What I was going to show you guys here was the transfer case has studs coming out of it. So, and it had a paper type gasket around it. I've cleaned up the surface here with a scraper and then some brake clean. I did the same to the back of the transmission. I'm just going to use some black RTV because I really don't feel like running to the parts store. So we'll put a thin bead on it. I already got it cut and ready to go. But I just wanted to say, it's best to put it on the side with the studs. That way when you're installing it, it's kind of hard to mess the bead up with the studs there. So if you put it on the transmission side, it would be kind of easy to misguide it into the bead and screw up your RTV. So we'll put it on the bolt side here, and then we'll get moving along.
Got women's in the high place. Got women's in the blue hill. Got women's on the east side, the west side, and any other side is the best side. Gonna do tonight. Gonna do tonight. Gonna do tonight. Well, I'm gonna do
Burb Files Midwest update. The Yukon XL tranny swap went great. No issues. Took it down the road. Great. Didn't slip in any gears. It's a pretty fresh tranny, so I wasn't really worried about that anyway. But yeah, it went smooth. Got it back in, topped it off. Good to go. Now we either have another new vehicle in the fleet, or I'll sell it and put it towards something else. We'll figure that out as we go. But that's it. On to the next project.